24시간 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. To tackle the national crisis of South Korea having the world's lowest birth rate, President Yoon vowed for an expansion of the public after-school program. A Seoul court acquits Samsung Electronics Chairman Lee Jae-yong on charges of alleged stock price manipulation and accounting fraud involving a 2015 merger that helped him gain more control of the nation's largest conglomerate. The OECD expects the global economy to grow by 2.9% this year, up from its previous forecast in November, with a sharp increase for the U.S. But the projection for South Korea has been slightly lower. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with efforts to tackle the world's lowest birth rate here in South Korea. The government will expand after-school childcare services to all elementary schools by the second semester to ease parental concerns. President Yoon says that not only parents, but the whole country should be responsible for childcare. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
The South Korean government is expanding childcare services with its public after-school program called Neulbom Schools. This as President Yoon hosted the 9th livelihood policy discussion with citizens on Monday, announcing that the program, which is currently in its test phase at 459 elementary schools, will be expanded to all elementary schools nationwide by the second semester.
Parents 케어에서 이제는 퍼블릭 케어, 즉 국가 돌봄으로 나아가야 합니다. 이 퍼블릭 케어를 정착시키려면 무엇보다 학교 역할이 확대되어야 합니다.
The program, which offers educational, arts, and sports activities to help with childcare, especially for households with working parents, started last year. The expansion will make all first-grade students eligible, moving beyond the current limited capacity and selection process. By 2026, it aims to include all elementary students. Additionally, schools will receive dedicated officials to oversee the program and help with the administrative side. It kills two birds with one stone when it comes to tackling the low birth rate. The cost of childcare and parents having to sacrifice their careers were two top reasons behind not having children, and the program tackles these. At the discussion were parents and teachers who touted the program, especially the fact that various arts and culture classes, such as ceramics, sports, and dancing, are offered too. Some suggestions were given too.
I believe the government has to allow specialized operation methods for the program depending on whether the area is rural or urban, and in the long term this will revitalize rural areas while children will enjoy the program more.
To this, President Yoon largely agreed. Referencing the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, he called on local experts in different industries to contribute to the program at schools around them.
이런 농촌형, 도시형 같은 지역 특색에 맞는 그런 교육 프로그램들을 다양하게 우리가 제공하고, 저도 그 재능 기부할 수 있는 게 있는지 한번 찾아보고 저도 한번 봉사활동을 하겠습니다. 감사합니다, 여러분. 고맙습니다.
President Yoon added that childcare itself is a part of education, especially for young children. And he wrapped up by saying that it's the government's duty to guarantee freedom for its citizens to be able to choose what they learn. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics Chairman Lee Jae-yong was today declared not guilty on charges brought against him regarding a controversial merger in 2015 and accounting fraud, which prosecutors believe helped him increase his control over the group. The court verdict comes more than 3 years after he was indicted. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
The Seoul Central District Court acquitted Samsung Electronics Executive Chairman Lee Jae-yong on Monday at his trial for alleged accounting fraud and violation of the law on capital markets several times. The court held its hearing on Lee at 2 p.m., 3 years and 5 months after the Samsung chief was indicted in connection with the 2015 fraud case. The main issue in the trial was whether the merger process between two Samsung affiliates in 2015 was conducted properly. In 2020, Lee was indicted on charges of manipulating stock prices in the 2015 merger of two Samsung affiliates, Samsung C&T and Chail Industries, in which 3 Samsung C&T shares were offered for 1 Chail share. There have been accusations that Samsung Group management may have intentionally lowered the value of Samsung C&T to help Lee gain control of the company, as he was the largest shareholder of Chail Industries. Last November, prosecutors demanded a 5-year prison sentence for Lee. They also requested a fine of 500 million Korean won, or around $375,000. Prosecutors say the manipulation caused losses for other investors and held Lee responsible for these. He also stands accused of involvement in suspected accounting fraud at Samsung Biologics, a subsidiary of Chail Industries. The court also delivered not guilty verdicts for 13 current and former employees of Samsung who were indicted along with Lee. It stated that there was no proof of the charges, adding that the prosecution failed to sufficiently prove that the merger was unlawfully conducted to bolster the chairman's control over the company. The Associated Press reported that the latest ruling by the court could alleviate the legal troubles surrounding the Samsung heir. 신하영, Arirang News.
Turning our focus to the upcoming general election. The current system of proportional representation, where the percentage of votes that a party earns affects the number of proportional seats, will likely stay. This is according to the main opposition party's chairman, despite criticism from the ruling party. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo explains.
The leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, Lee Jae-yong, announced on Monday that his party has decided to keep the current system of proportional representation in the upcoming 22nd general election. In the current semi-mixed member proportional representation system, or the MMP system, the percentage of votes earned determines the number of proportional representation seats a party can occupy. For example, when the number of regional seats a party has is less than the percentage of votes received, the party can occupy additional seats in proportional representation. This system was introduced before the 21st general election to help smaller parties enter the assembly, but its objective has since been tarnished, with larger parties establishing paper parties, or the so-called satellite parties, to earn more representation. Now, as the DP holds the majority in the assembly, occupying 164 out of 298 seats, the election will likely take place as announced by Lee Jae-yong. However, the ruling People Power Party, which has called for the return to the mixed-member majoritarian representation, or the MMM system, strongly criticized Lee's decision. The leader of its Emergency Steering Committee, Han Dong-un, said that this would only cause voter confusion and that the election system should not be decided by a single person. The MMM system called for by the PPP separately allocates the regional and proportional representation seats. It was adopted in the 16th through 20th Assembly. Amid talks on the electoral system, the ruling and opposition parties are finding ways to prepare to win as many seats as possible. PPP last week launched a new satellite party. DP says it also plans to establish a party for proportional votes. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, South Korea's Unification Minister Kim Young-ho hosted a special roundtable discussion this afternoon with 4 prominent experts in their fields. The presidents of research institutions in the fields of unification, diplomacy, and national security took part in the discussion, with foreign ambassadors from countries including the UK and New Zealand in attendance. Minister Kim said even though North Korea is insisting on the two Koreas theory, Seoul would continue to strive for unification based on the Constitution and universal values of freedom and human rights. South Korea and Saudi Arabia have agreed to further strengthen their defense cooperation. Seoul's Minister of Defense Acquisition Program Administration and his Saudi Arabian counterpart signed a memorandum of understanding on Sunday in Riyadh. Under the MOU, the two countries will establish a joint committee to cooperate in research and weapons development in the mid to the long term. The defense ministers of the two countries also attended the signing ceremony. South Korea's Minister Shin Won-sik is on a visit to the Middle East this week. On Sunday, he attended the World Defense Show 2024 in Riyadh and held talks with Saudi Arabia's Minister of National Guard and Minister of Defense. The OECD expects the global economy to grow by 2.9% this year, up from its previous forecast in November, with a stronger growth predicted for the U.S. But the projection for South Korea has been slightly lowered. Our Park Gun-woo reports.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development revised its 2024 global economic growth projection upwards as it sharply increased its outlook for the United States. According to the OECD's latest interim economic outlook released on Monday, the global economy is expected to grow by 2.9% from an earlier estimated 2.7% made in November. However, the revised outlook is a slowdown compared to the 2023 annual growth of 3.1%, amid weakened growth momentum, continuous monetary tightening, and China's weak economic condition. The organization predicted the U.S. will continue its moderate 2.1% growth, a revision from its previous projection of 1.5%, due to weakening inflation and drops in interest rates. However, it said China's economy is expected to slow down due to its sluggish asset market and high debt, while keeping its growth projection of 4.7% made in November. As for South Korea, the OECD forecasts 2.2% growth this year, 0.1 percentage point lower than its previous projection in November. This year's figure is the same as that projected for 2024 by the government and the Korea Development Institute. Regarding inflation, the organization expects most countries to return to their targets by the end of 2025, as headline and core inflation rates gradually ease. The OECD kept its rate projection for South Korea this year at 2.7%. The organization pointed out the possibility of high inflation caused by geopolitical risks in the Middle East and debt burden caused by high interest rates as downward factors for the global economy. The OECD said countries need to be cautious with monetary policies and in securing fiscal soundness, along with making efforts to restore global supply chains and free trade throughout the year. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Moving on, after strikes against Iran-backed groups in the Middle East, the U.S. says it'll not stop there when it comes to responding to any killing of its people. This is further raising fears of a wider conflict in the region. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji with this report.
The U.S. says it intends to launch additional strikes against Iran-backed groups to send a clear message that it'll respond when its forces are attacked or when its people are killed. That's according to the White House National Security Advisor on Sunday local time, who added that the country believed the previous strikes had a good effect in degrading the capabilities of the militia groups to attack the U.S.
It began with the strikes on Friday night, but that is not the end of it.
Last week, the U.S. hit Iran-backed groups in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. On Friday, it carried out strikes that hit more than 85 targets linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard and Iran-backed militants it backs. This was in response to the drone attack on an American military base in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. troops and injured 40 others on January 28th. The Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella organization of Iran-backed armed groups, claimed responsibility for the attack, but Iran denied its involvement. Then, on Saturday, the U.S. and the U.K. launched attacks against 36 Houthi targets in Yemen in another effort to further destabilize the militant groups. As fears grow of a wider war in the Middle East, Sullivan also made it clear that the U.S. does not wish the conflict to spread.
What I will say is that the president is determined to respond forcefully to attacks on our people. The president also is not looking for a wider war in the Middle East.
Amid escalating tensions, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to arrive in the Middle East on his 5th visit to the region since the Israel-Hamas war began. He's expected to visit Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and the West Bank to push a ceasefire and to reach a deal on releasing all remaining hostages being held by Hamas. Peunji, Arirang News.
In the U.S., President Joe Biden won the Democratic Party's first official presidential nomination race in South Carolina this past Saturday, raising the prospects of a rematch with former President Donald Trump. Lee Seung-jae has more.
In just the first Democratic Party primary in South Carolina, voters have already sent a clear message that incumbent President Joe Biden will be leading the way come November's presidential election. In the Democratic Party's first official presidential nomination contest on Saturday, Biden took 96.2% of ballots cast, with 97% of the total votes tallied by Sunday midnight, besting Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson, who each won around 2% of ballots. The landslide victory also means Biden will be awarded all 55 of the state's Democratic delegates, as neither Williamson nor Phillips broke the 15% threshold for being awarded any delegates. Despite the overwhelming victory in the state, it also showed a much lower than expected voter turnout. Compared to the 16% of the Democrat voters who took to the polls during the state's 2020 Democratic primary, just 4% voted on Saturday. The low turnout could signal weakened enthusiasm for Biden among Democrats. The victory for Biden could now pave the way for a rematch of the 2020 presidential election with former President Donald Trump, who scored 2 consecutive nomination wins in the early voting states of Iowa and New Hampshire. Biden was absent from the New Hampshire ballot but won the contest as a write-in candidate with 64% of the vote, while in Iowa, the incumbent party decided not to cast any ballots at their caucuses, denying Biden the chance to win there. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Over in Chile, massive forest fires broke out in the central region, leaving hundreds killed or missing. As residents mourn over the lost lives, the president pledges to assist those impacted. An Sung-jin reports.
Villages devoured by flames and smoke. Homes were scorched after massive forest fires broke out in central Chile last Friday. The Chilean National Disaster Prevention and Response Service said at least 112 have been killed, as around 160 active fires raged along the country's coastline. 1,400 firefighters were deployed on Sunday to control the fire. The city of Viña del Mar, west of the capital Santiago, burst into flames, leaving at least 1,600 people without homes, while 200 people were reported missing. The city and the surrounding area are home to a popular beach resort and tourist gathering area.
In 10 minutes, the fire was already on us. There was smoke, the sky turned black, everything was dark. The wind felt like a hurricane. It was like being in hell.
The wildfires in the neighborhood of Viña del Mar started in mountainous forest areas. They soon reached densely populated areas on the city's periphery. The forest fires broke out during a week of record-high temperatures in central Chile, where weather conditions of low humidity and high wind speeds made it difficult to control them. The cause of the wildfires is currently being investigated, but President Gabriel Boric says the authorities cannot rule out the possibility that some of them could have been started deliberately.
It's hard to think there are so horrible and heartless people who could be able to inflict so much pain. But if these people exist, we will search for them. We will find them.
The president declared a state of emergency and designated Monday and Tuesday as days of national mourning for fire victims. Officials extended curfews in cities most heavily affected by the blazes as residents were evacuated. As the death toll is set to rise, the forest fires are said to be the country's worst disaster since 2010's earthquake. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, replicas of traditional museum artifacts are now a merchandising trend. As our Yoon reports, they have become more popular among the younger generation after undergoing a transformation.
Museum merchandise is undergoing a unique transformation. By having the aesthetic appeal and practicality of certain replicas enhanced, they are captivating the younger generation, creating widespread interest on social media. A miniature of the pensive Bodhisattva statue, famous for its smile and a designated national treasure, is the best-selling item. As the original replica of the statue was seen as unappealing to people in their 20s and 30s due to its size, the National Museum Foundation of Korea created the miniature version to make the statue more accessible. Another national treasure is the Baekje Guild bronze incense burner. Its replica miniature sold out within a week of its release, amid a growing interest in older styles among the younger generations who are drawn to unique and meaningful items.
We have captured the details of the original artifacts with advanced 3D printing technology and incorporated a variety of colors. Not only does it serve as a beautiful decoration, but it also functions as an incense burner, just like the original artifact.
The revenue generated from museum merchandise reached almost 15 billion Korean won, or around $11 million in 2023. This is about a 27% increase in annual sales in 2022, which had set the highest record at the time.
The designs are different from what I had thought in the past.
I wasn't very interested in museum merchandise, but seeing them for the first time, I want to buy a few of them.
I bought several things which is very, very nice, well designed. This is a cup, and it is with a lot of Oriental type of design ideas. It gives you some kind of a very pleasant feeling.
This newly released set of drinking glasses constantly crashes the website due to high demand. As the number of purchases by tourists is also increasing, the foundation is focusing on creating practical and lightweight items that visitors can easily take back as souvenirs, commemorating their visit to the National Museum.
There's also a special hall that displays different kinds of museum merch. Here, people can try out the items and get a feel for how they might look when displayed in their own homes.
Historical artifacts are going beyond their traditional significance and becoming personal treasures that are used and seen in people's everyday lives. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
After milder winter conditions, rain and snow have made a return. Rain has already turned into snow in areas with low temperatures. With a heavy snow warning issued, Gangwon-do and northern Gyeongsangbuk-do Provinces will have a large amount of snow. There will be more than 15 centimeters in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do and northeastern Gyeongsangbuk-do Provinces, and more than 10 on the east coast by tomorrow. Seoul metropolitan areas will also receive 1 to 5 centimeters. Most of this rain and snow will move away tomorrow morning. However, the sky will be a little bit cloudy afterward. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at -3 degrees Celsius, Gwangju and Busan 3 degrees. Daytime temperatures will be similar to or slightly higher than today's. Seoul will get up to 4, Gwangju and Daegu 8 degrees. On Wednesday, it will be mostly sunny without any worries about the cold. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Hope everyone has a great start of the week.
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries.